I remember the first gust of wind that hit my face that morning on the trailhead. Cold, sharp, and full of promise. I'd spent months preparing for this solo trek through the Rockies, mapping every ridge and valley, rehearsing my victory speech for when I reached the final summit. I'd posted about it online too. Every photo, every quote about courage and self-discovery. Friends called me the Mountain Man. My family beamed with pride. Even my co-workers had chipped in for a fancy ultralight stove as a send-off gift. This was supposed to be my great proving ground, the story I'd tell for the rest of my life. I'd convinced everyone, including myself, that I was ready. But the mountain doesn't care about declarations. 2 days in, the weather turned from gentle mist to a bone-chilling downpour that soaked through every layer I owned. The trail turned to sludge. My boots squished with each step, my pack straps cut into my shoulders, and the sound of my own breathing was loud in the silence. No camera crews, no likes or comments now, just fog and my own clumsy footsteps. That night, I huddled beneath my tarp, teeth chattering, staring at the flickering light of my stove. I felt like an imposter, someone who had written a story about bravery, but forgotten to practice living it. By the fourth day, the glamour was gone. I hadn't seen another soul since the first afternoon, and the loneliness gnawed harder than hunger. I began talking aloud to myself, to the wind, to the mountains, half to stay sane, half to fill the silence. My hands trembled as I filtered water, and each night I dreamed of my warm bed, my kitchen, the hum of conversation I used to take for granted. Yet, every time I imagined turning back, I saw the faces of everyone who believed in me. The thought of explaining my failure, of admitting that adventure wasn't as glorious as it looked in photos, felt heavier than my entire pack. Then came the climb, the final pass before the midway point where I'd planned to record a triumphant message for everyone back home. It was steeper than it looked on the map, and the thin air made my lungs burn. My thighs screamed with every step. I dropped my pack halfway up and sat there for an hour, staring at the valley below. The clouds shifted, revealing sunlight over the distant peaks, and for a moment I wondered if quitting was really the same as failing, or if it was just being honest. I didn't move for a long time, wrestling with that thought, the silence of the wilderness pressing against me like judgment. By the time I reached the ridge, my legs felt like stone. The sun had dipped low, painting everything in that strange twilight hue that makes the world look both peaceful and unforgiving. I dropped my pack beside a scraggly pine and sank to my knees, breath ragged, heart thudding in my ears. Below me, the valley stretched out, wild, endless, and utterly indifferent to my struggle. The wind tore through my jacket and carried my thoughts down into the emptiness. I pulled out my phone, not for a signal. I hadn't seen a single bar since day 2, but to scroll through the photos I'd taken before leaving. There I was, grinning beside the packed car, coffee in hand, the caption, "Ready for the adventure of a lifetime." Another one from the gear room, rows of neatly packed supplies and that same confident smirk plastered across my face. I remembered how many people had commented things like, "So inspiring," and "Wish I had your courage." Courage, the word echoed in my head like a cruel joke. Right now, courage wasn't what I felt. I felt small. I felt foolish. Mostly, I felt alone. I stared at the grey horizon until the first drops of rain began to fall again. I didn't even bother setting up the tarp this time. I just crawled into my sleeping bag and pulled the hood tight. My stomach growled, but I couldn't bring myself to cook. I could almost hear my own post online, something poetic about perseverance and grit, but there was no poetry in being wet and cold, no grace in waking every hour to the sound of wind ripping through your shelter. That night, I thought about home, about my sister's laugh when she'd said, "Don't get eaten by a bear," about my dad, proud but worried, asking me to text when I could, about how easy it had been to promise everyone I'd be fine. I'd wanted to be a symbol of something, strength, freedom, adventure. But all I felt now was the heavy truth of it. I wasn't out here discovering myself. I was out here hiding from the possibility of letting everyone down. By dawn, the rain had stopped. Mist curled off the treetops like smoke. I sat there, watching the world wake up, wondering if turning back would make me a coward, or if it would make me honest. My breath fogged in the air, and for the first time, I whispered aloud, "I don't want to do this anymore." The words startled me, like they'd come from someone else. But they were mine, and once they were out, I couldn't take them back. The next morning, I forced myself to pack up, though every motion felt deliberate, slow, as if I were buying time from the inevitable decision. My hands were stiff from the cold, fingers fumbling with the straps. The fabric of my pack was slick with dew, smelling faintly of smoke and earth. The world was quiet, except for the caw of a distant raven and the rhythmic clink of my metal mug against the rock. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered that I should keep going, finish what I'd started. But another voice, softer and steadier, asked what finishing even meant anymore. The trail twisted upward through a stand of spruce, the ground spongy with old needles. Each step brought the same question. What are you proving, and to whom? When I first planned this trip, I imagined heroism, standing on a peak, arms outstretched, wind roaring triumphantly around me, but what the pictures never showed was the blisters, the cracked lips, the way silence can press on you until you feel hollow. I'd told myself solitude was strength, but now it felt more like punishment. By midday, I reached a high plateau. The map said there was a lake nearby, a good place to rest, maybe fish. But when I crested the final rise, all I found was a shallow basin of mud and melting snow. The reflection of the grey sky shimmered faintly in the puddles. I dropped my pack again and just stood there, shoulders slumped. My legs were trembling, not from effort, but from the weight of realization. I'd built this expedition into a monument of identity. Every mile was supposed to be proof of something. Discipline, courage, transformation. But standing there, shivering in the wind, I understood how fragile that illusion was. The wilderness didn't care about stories, it didn't applaud or comfort, it simply was. It existed beyond my need for meaning, and for the first time, I let that truth sink in without fighting it. I pulled my rain jacket tighter and sank down against a rock. I thought about all the times I'd scrolled through other people's adventure posts, faces lit by sunrise, gear immaculate, captions about finding peace in the wild. I realised how much I'd wanted that image for myself, how much I'd mistaken performance for purpose. Out here, stripped of everything but the basics of survival, there was no audience. Just me and the sound of wind over stone. The light began to fade again, and I made camp near the empty lake. I boiled water for a packet of soup and watched steam rise into the chill air. I should have felt defeated, but instead there was a strange calm in admitting I was tired. Not just physically, but of pretending. For the first time in days, I stopped planning, stopped narrating, stopped trying to live a story worth telling. I just sat there in silence and let the mountain hold me, small and unimportant, yet somehow more real than I'd felt in a long time. That night, I couldn't sleep. The stars came out, bright and countless, scattered across the sky like someone had spilled salt on black velvet. The air was crisp, sharp with pine and the faint tang of melting snow. My little campfire had long since burned to embers, leaving only the quiet hiss of cooling coals. I lay there, listening to the mountains breathe, the distant creak of trees in the wind, the occasional rattle of pebbles as something small scurried by. Out here, sound carried differently. Every noise felt intimate, close enough to touch. I stared up at those stars for hours, turning everything over in my mind. I thought about the people who'd wished me luck, the messages waiting on my phone, the expectation hanging like a weight over my shoulders. I'd built this journey into a public performance of resilience, and now, alone under the night sky, I couldn't help wondering who I'd done it for. Was it really for me? Or for the version of me I wanted everyone else to see? Sometime past midnight, the wind picked up again, rattling my tent. I got up and walked to the edge of camp, wrapping my blanket around my shoulders. Below, the valley stretched into darkness. The stars reflected faintly in the patches of standing water where the lake should have been. My breath hung in the cold air like a ghost. "You can just go home," I whispered, testing the thought again. The words didn't sting as much this time. They drifted out into the night and vanished. For the first time since the start, I considered what that would actually mean. The long walk back, the admission of failure, the awkward explanations, but beneath all that fear was something else. Relief. The idea of warmth, of voices, of a door closing against the wind. I could almost smell coffee, hear my mother's laugh, picture the grin on my best friend's face when I told him the truth. Maybe they'd understand, maybe they wouldn't. But did it matter as much as I'd thought? The stars blurred as my eyes watered, and I laughed quietly to myself, though I didn't know why. Maybe it was the exhaustion, maybe something breaking loose inside me. All this time, I'd been chasing the idea of being extraordinary when maybe what I needed was to just be human, to admit fear, exhaustion, and the simple fact that I was done. When I finally crawled back into my tent, the ground felt harder, but somehow more honest. I didn't dream that night. I just drifted in and out of sleep to the rhythm of the wind, no longer imagining triumph or defeat, just a quiet kind of acceptance, like the mountain and I had finally stopped arguing with each other. Morning came soft and golden, sunlight dripping through the trees like honey. I woke to the smell of damp earth and the quiet chirp of birds beginning their day. My tent was slick with dew, my breath still visible in the chill air. I sat up slowly, stretching sore muscles, and for the first time in a week, I didn't feel dread at the thought of another day. There was a strange peace in my decision, even if it still stung around the edges. I brewed one last cup of instant coffee, holding the mug in both hands as the steam curled into the light. The world around me looked different, gentler though unchanged. The same peaks towered above, the same wind whispered through the pines, but I wasn't fighting it anymore. I wasn't trying to extract meaning from the landscape or bend it into my story. I just sat there and let it exist. And somehow, that felt enough. When I finally packed up camp, I didn't rush. I folded my tarp carefully, brushed the dirt off my stove, tightened every strap until the pack sat snug against my back. Then I took one last look at the empty lake basin, that grey mirror of mud and snow where I'd wrestled so much doubt. It wasn't a place of victory, but it had become something deeper, a place of honesty. The hike down was quiet. My boots crunched over frost-stiff leaves, and the trail wound downward, through groves of aspen, their white trunks gleaming in the sun. I passed the spot where I'd first thought about quitting and smiled at the memory. I'd imagined that choice would feel like failure, but it didn't. It felt like finally telling the truth, to myself, to everyone else. The mountain hadn't beaten me, it had simply stripped me down to what was real. When I reached the trailhead that afternoon, the parking lot was empty, except for my dusty old car. I set my pack down and just stood there, breathing in the air one last time. My phone still showed no signal, which somehow felt right. I didn't take a photo or record a triumphant post. I just sat on the tailgate, eating the last granola bar from my bag, letting the silence settle. Later, when I finally drove back into town and bars appeared on my screen, the flood of notifications blinked to life. Messages from friends, family, followers, all waiting for the heroic update. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long while before typing a few simple words. Didn't finish the trail, learned more than I expected. And that was it. No filters, no grand lesson, no story of conquest, just the truth. Quiet, unpolished, and strangely enough, the most freeing thing I'd ever shared.